All right. I want to journey through Genesis for a little bit. I'm trying not to make this a real long video, but I have a lot to cover. And so, for starters, let me just say I'm piggybacking off of what it says on Bible Project on their series on the firstborn. They're on about video five, each one an hour long. So they've already spent about 5 hours talking about the firstborn. So that's definitely good to watch. But I just wanted to give my thoughts on what I think it's all saying. These are just my thoughts, so I don't want anybody to take this as good as gospel by any stretch of the imagination, or even think about it as teaching on religion. I mean, I'm not no teacher on religion, so but I feel like Tim and John and them guys are close, but I feel like I could just add a little bit. So Elder Mike's been journeying through Genesis. Pastor Mike's been journeying through Genesis. Let me just hit it a little bit. So this is really about the firstborn, and it says, let me start from Genesis 4, and it says that Eve, that the man, which is Adam, which is spelled the same as Edom. Edom and Adam are spelled the self same way. So it says Adam knew his wife, and she bore Cain, and I said, I have begotten a man with the help of the Lord. And then she bore his brother Abel. So gotten is said twice here. And so a lot of people get it confused when they say this law first mentioned. There's no such thing. What they're confusing is the fact that a lot of times in the Bible, the first time the word's used happens to be in naming something, and therefore the name is what it means. And so it's purposely that redundant. It's supposed to be that primordial that it does kind of lean towards, oh, this is the first time it happened. But by no stretch of the imagination would that be known to anybody at that time, which wasn't that even that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And so I want to start with uh, this Cain. This is Cain to me is Israel, because and so is Adam, because they were kicked out. So this is what happened to Israel, that they were put into the desert, and so the temple looked eastward for the Messiah to come back from being scattered about, and Israel is the northern kingdom, and that's very important for this video. That even though people who we call Jewish have named a nation Israel, that does not mean that these are synonymous terms. Through most of the Bible, the term Israel means the northern kingdom. And so this is often called Samaria or Ephraim. And as we're journeying through Genesis, we will see Ephraim getting the promise. And so this curse of Cain is uh, after, so that here he is. We're going to get into John 8. In John 8, he said, your father was a murderer from the beginning, the father of lies. So, as Paul says, that they have enemies that they're dealing with, that an angel of darkness can even masquerade as an angel, as a minister of light, so that there are spiritual, supernatural forces may be going on, but we're still dealing with people at a time so the people that were bothering them were these super apostles, according to Paul, who would say, yes, I know all about the law and the prophets, and so you need to fall under my leadership. And I'm not saying Paul was much better. Paul wanted everybody to fall under his leadership. So anybody teaching a different gospel to him was accursed. And so, but it says here in Genesis 4, I've slain a man for wounding me, a young man for bruising me. In Genesis 23, 4:23, it says Lamech says unto his wife, so he's got a couple wives, and he makes them listen to him, and he tells them that he's slain a man, and supposedly they're not even supposed to tell anybody. And he said, if Cain be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 77-fold. And that's because Cain is the Canaanites, is what that's supposed to mean. And the Canaanites are supposed to be confused with the Reubenites and the Hamites. These are people that, they had the boy be the thing, and they had the statue be the other thing, and they were full of iniquity. So like the Amorites and all them, the people that were in there when Abraham came down there, they were going to be cut off and sent out. And so this is the story of Israel, because the Bible wasn't written by Israel, even though there were Samaritans that had a Torah. This isn't the Torah that the Samaritans actually had. And these aren't the Israelites that were there. These were not quite Second Temple, but basically that Israel was a big name, and there were people using the name Israel, and these were the Samaritans in the Second Temple period. And Ezra dealt with these guys in like Ezra 4. Jesus dealt with these in John 4. And Malachi talks about, Edom and stuff like this. So let's get to what these terms mean. Because Israel is the northern kingdom, the ones that were cast out. They were cast out by Nebuchadnezzar, by Tilgath-Pilsen or whatever. Then Sargon, what were all those guys? Sennacherib and all those Assyrian kings, the kings of the north, the confederation from the north. But this is different than Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus and different guys like these. These guys are more seen as like a Julius Caesar type, that they weren't from the Claudian line. They were from the Julian line. And this is the story of like Oedipus, and the story of Muhammad, and the story of all of them. And this is the story of Romulus and Remus. This is the story of David and everybody. This is the story of the Bible. This is why Jesus says salvation comes of the Jews. Is this story of the one that wasn't preferred, the secondborn, not having a birthright, not having a blessing, and having to earn it himself, and therefore inheriting it. So when Psalm 82 says, "Arise, you are gods," that's to get their mind out of the ashes. That Isaiah 59 and Ezekiel 37 and Malachi are talking about the same destruction, but Malachi says this is the destruction of Edom, and he does that for a purpose. It's that this is what Jesus is saying in John 3, that you must be born again. So out of the ashes rises the phoenix, because the ashes is the shell. From dust to dust, there's the shell that's cast off, and then the soul is the light from within. But the people that don't have the light from within are the sons of darkness. So This was in the time that Jesus came to earth. The third Isaiah. This is a huge motif of light and darkness that we're going to get into the later chapters of Isaiah. This is huge, and even references in Isaiah 9, a light to the Gentiles, as it's in Galilee of the Gentiles. This is what Jesus was doing, while he was finding the lost sheep, such as Peter and all them, Andrew, and people who had largely abandoned their Hebrew ways for Greek ways. And so when it comes to Lamech said to his wives, for I have slain a man for wounding me, a young man for bruising me. So if Cain be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 77-fold. So think about this. Lamech is making his own law. He's saying that if somebody somebody can hit him, right? Jesus got hit around. He said, offer the other cheek, right? He said, offer the other cheek. As in Lamentations says, Lamentations 5, turn the other cheek. This was a low point. Lamentations is a low point. This is the ashes. And this is why salvation is of the Jews. This is what they were trying to tell us, the Deuteronomists, about a contrite spirit, the lowly. And so this is what Ezekiel 37 is about. And so if somebody bruises, so families would do a lot of this. They weren't really like police like we have it now, and courts that deal all with this quite the same way. They would more deal with like more capital things. And if it came to somebody slapping another person and bruising him, the court, if you went through and paid the court all that money to put your, you got before the king or the judge or whatever, then you might have to pay a lot of money to just get their family to pay you a little bit, or to be able to slap them. Their family might just go up and slap Lamech. The like, oh, Lamech, oh yeah, so somebody like comes up and avenges this boy that was killed by Lamech. Here in Genesis 4:24, he's saying, if Cain be avenged sevenfold, then truly Lamech 77-fold. So, but Jesus is saying, they said, Lord, how many times must we forgive? And he uses this exact same number, 77. So just imagine Lamech being like, oh, you hit me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 77. Because he feels so justified. And so then we have Seth, and this is who replaced Abel. And that's going to come into great importance later. But I mean, if you look at all these things that these sons of Cain did, they're all things that are associated with Israel. This is like David and all them. This is what they're doing. They're Abraham and all them. Lot. They're living in tents. These are the dudes. These are the Hebrews, the Hyksos. And so we go up here to the birth of Isaac. And Isaac is the second born. And this is after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, they say this today. Why don't why don't the Palestinians just cross the Jordan? I mean, why would Lot choose the sulfur wasteland? Oh, the idea is that it was really nice, and then it because of all the sin, it's not nice. But really, lots of things have been drying up, and just the whole area is drying up pretty good. It's just being down there in the Dead Sea. Who knows how fertile it was once upon a time? They have to be going back pretty far, I think. So Ishmael is the firstborn, and I think we should have some sympathy for Hagar. I mean, like, she could have this contrite heart. I mean, because she's just getting turned out by her owner. Her body's just being played like a fiddle for whatever scheme that is happening in her house. I mean, that doesn't sound too nice to me, but Abraham, he was right before that given the land of the Kenizzite, right? But we know that one of those guys, the Canaanites or something, the Kenites, that's regardless of what it says in Numbers, that this is where Caleb's from. And so maybe in some, I mean, we know Abraham was down in like Beersheba, so maybe in some kind of way this is one of his kids. But I mean, Abraham, you got to feel kind of sorry for him, because when he was down south, he was a sojourner. So his wife got put out by, all these kings and their castle, and he would have sitting there outside, but God was on his side supposedly, and then Abimelech takes and restores Sarah to Abraham. So he had closed down the wombs and all this. So maybe his son Eleazar was his stepson from Pharaoh, but it wasn't from Abimelech. In that case, he closed off the wombs. But there was this hatred by Sarah for Ishmael, and this is similar. This is paralleled in Rebecca favoring Jacob. So we have here not necessarily God's intervention. It's like the mother. It's who the mother chooses. And even the birth of some of the sons of Israel were in this quarreling of these wives of Jacob. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know why Isaac would pray to the Lord. Oh, Rebecca's wife is closed. Her womb is closed. I mean, the girl's only 13 years old, so maybe she hadn't had her period yet. But maybe for whatever reason he did, and so he had these, like this kind of story is this whole story of Isaac with the wells and with his wife and the other king. I mean, it's basically just a retelling of the Abraham story. There's no real substance to it. But I think the whole purpose of it is to tell the story of Isaac, or of Jacob and Esau. That's so you have to have another generation put in there, and so that's what this is for, and they're laughing about it. And so there was already a story of Ishmael and everything, but there has to be the story of somebody who is of the same bloodline. Ishmael wasn't of the exact same bloodline because it had the different mother. There's the quarrel there. But so now you have the story of these two that are the same bloodline that are going to be separated one day, like goats and sheep. And this is the story of, it is a story of Ishmael, but there's this nuance there. And there's a further nuance, the next generation. And that is of Judah and and Joseph and Benjamin and Levi and that. So there's the next generation, the nuance is even more crucial. But you still have these recurring themes. You still have the second born being preferred. You still have the firstborn having done something wrong, Reuben, for instance. And maybe Issachar or something, but still the last born of that line was Joseph, until the Mandrake incident, that is, or something along those lines. And that brings us to the name of today's video. What does Judah mean? So she was hated by her husband, and even by extension, Jacob hated, in a sense, in the same sense that Esau was hated, that he wasn't favored by his mother, that Jacob, he had these wives, one he favored. Of Leah, much higher. And so it says, birth a son, and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah, then Leah's children. And she was in this rivalry with her sister, the sibling rivalry. They were, and just like Eve exclaimed, "Oh, I had a child." This is in Jewish thought. Remember, Paul said, "Women are saved through bearing children." That this idea that like this is what women really want. They just want to stay home and have children from you. It was their evil scheme all along. It wasn't you trying to have sex with her that was the scheme. It was her trying to have children that was the scheme, right? But so it says here, "I will praise," and that's this is spelled, this praise, Strong's 3034. It's when said in this context, "I will praise," it's spelled the same way as Adam, largely, because although there is a O in there, that might, because the aleph is silent, that might be the ayin. I've heard that the aleph vov can make the ayin. Those are used interchangeably for Esau and basically Edom, because you can add wavs or vavs without changing the meaning of Hebrew words, because it's a vowel, and the consonants are often what bear the meaning. And sometimes they would use wavs to change the meaning of words because they know they can add them freely, that if they want two words to mean different things, they'll add the wa to the word that they want to be different, and therefore making it different. And then the other difference between Adam and here, this word aude is the H at the end, the ha, or the and this ha is a letter that is often interchanged with a mem. When you use square Hebrew and it fades over time, the mem and the ha are indistinguishable. And so they've changed a lot of words by like the Miriam or Mariah or Miriam. They're the same word. When you change the H to the M, it doesn't change the meaning of the word. They're both ways of making words plural. And so it says here. Oh, I jumped ahead to Jacob, but I wanted to stay here on Esau and Jacob. It said, 2 nations are in the womb, and 2 people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now this happened. This happened through most of the book of First Kings. First Kings is a period of quite a long time where there was a king over, I guess until 1 Kings 13, they were both under Solomon, the north and the south. But at the time of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, there was, around chapter 14, there was a series of different kings, and then through 2 Kings, and some of them, for the most part, they're pretty wicked, especially in the northern kingdom. And so the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. And so during this time period, before Esau rebelled, around the time after King Ahab died, that the king of Edom was the king of Judah. And this Judean king, David, that set up this dynasty, who wasn't, and Bible Project goes into this, their idea of, the firstborn being dispossessed, and then the secondborn and becoming the firstborn, that title of firstborn, that's where Jesus is the firstborn of all creation. He wasn't born first. This is a title. So the preeminent one. So this title, preeminent one, is now going to David, one that was never considered, And how does this happen? Through the book of Numbers, which is a Judean source, a late source, a Deuteronomic source that is saying that there's a Nazirite exemption. And Judges is written by one of these same sources. So Judges deals with the Nazirites such as Samson. And it's all about the favoring of one bloodline. And so that's Malachi and Ezra's biggest qualm against the Samaritans, is they want to claim there's some foreign bloodline, demon possessed. And so there was this idea of this Deuteronomy and such, that there was Goliath, there was giants, and these were Nephilim, and there was a pure race, and they deal with this in Numbers and stuff like that. And so this is going to come into play when it comes to Ezra's refusal to have any part with the Samaritans. Now, the Samaritans were using a Torah, but it was a Jewish Torah. They didn't realize it because they were using what had come about from the Deuteronomist. And they had said, well, because the prophets and stuff came later and they were through the southern kingdom, therefore it must mean that we only have the Torah. And then they use the first 5 books. But they don't know what was the original Israelite Torah. And the original Israelite Torah was a Canaanite Torah. And so the whole conquest of Joshua and all of this was the story of when the Hyksos got kicked out of Egypt. And these were the Israelites. And they were Canaanite in multiple ways. That when they came into the land, they didn't realize the Canaanites they were kicking out were actually the same bloodline as them. That, like it said, Esau never went to Egypt, right? Esau never went to Egypt. And you're not going to believe that Esau, God gave him this area, they're going to stay right there. Oh, there's an invisible wall. I can't go there. These people that are very traveling on camels, and meanwhile people are like Muhammad supposedly went thousand miles on a camel, but these guys wouldn't, go over to the Judean desert ever. When supposedly Solomon had a port down in the Red Sea, but these people never mixed. And when they talk about David, they're basically describing Esau. They're, that's what they, like the ruddy um, outside guy. His brothers are inside. He's outside. And so what are the Jewish authors saying throughout all of this of the second born? Well, what they're saying is not that they are the second born, but really that they're the firstborn. Technically, they're after Israel, so in a sense, they're the second born. And that's how it always seems to me, because they went up into, like the Judean source is the second source, because they went from Persia to Canaan, 400 BC, and they seem like a Johnny come lately. They're the second source. But they're saying, no, actually, we were the firstborn, but Israel stole our identity. So when we steal Israel's identity, we're only stealing it back, what was rightfully ours to begin with. And these other people, they went down to Egypt and back and created a civilization, but their civilization was praying to the wrong god, the evil god, the demon god, burning the babies and all this. Meanwhile, we were stuck in the desert out east, wound up in Persia. One of our daughters married, one of our nieces married the whole friggin' king, and then, even though Cyrus had said that they go a long time ago, well, it turns out none of them did. Forget Zechariah and Haggai and all them. Everyone's still posted up out in Persia. Here, Nehemiah was the cupbearer, and Ezra was the scribe, and they said, well, yeah, Daniel was told by Cyrus, 150 years ago to go rebuild, but and he gave him all the money to do it. So we put the gold all there, but we put like a wall up, but we never fixed the breaches in the wall. We left the gold there, and we didn't really go there. The next couple generations, and we eventually started trickling in. We decided to go down to Kiryat Arba, which, even though it was unpopular for the patriarchs, ended up, lo and behold, not really serving much of a purpose of anything. And oh yeah, and then forget those Samaritans, and forget the lost tribes, because according to Ezra, they all came back with him under the tutelage of the Jewish people. And so it said, now Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob. And so This red, this is the color of David. Esau, red pottage. Adam, Adam, east of Eden, east of Jerusalem is Esau, Ammon, Moab, the ones who were cast out. And this so the ones that were cast out is Israel. But here come, so who's cast out? By the Neo-Assyrians, the Israelites. But Ezra is saying that way later, under his leadership, they're back, and the Samaritans aren't the dudes. We're the dudes. They're fakers. Well, the Samaritans are Israel. They're the Torah followers. These other people weren't even there. They're coming look at Ezra 4. Ezra's coming later on the scene. There's some people already there. And apparently the temple in Jerusalem was just getting built. These people, they got some like old temple that they've been drawing water from for a while. And here even long after Ezra, in the time of Herod, you got people, hey, we just spent 42 years making this thing, putting these last touches on it and stuff. But I'm here to tell you that it's all conflated. That everything from Ezra to the Second Jewish War, so everything from 350 BC to 150 BC, so this 500-year span is all conflated into what's known as the Second Temple period. And even though Second Temple period ended in 70, that the Bible was as we know today, compiled for the Second Jewish World War, referencing the First Jewish World War, Jewish-Roman War, and the subsequent Bar Kokhba revolt, much the same. It was becoming even more circulated during that war, and that's why it became so popular, is because it's telling a lesson of here. So let me just cut to the chase. I'm here to say that when they claim to be the firstborn, they're claiming to be Esau. The Jewish people, that this word Odea is basically the same word as Adam, and they're claiming to be the first. And this is the perspective that it's taken in the Bible too. But there are these other people, Samaritans, who represent nations as a whole, and therefore the nations are Israel, and that the southern kingdom is Edomia. And so when Jesus came on the scene to find the lost sheep of Israel, the king of the Jews was Herod the Great, was the king of the Jews, the Edomian. And that this lesson in the Bible is how this zealousness cost them everything. They needed to create something new because the temple system was completely over. It collapsed on itself. It was self-destructive in nature, and it was against all people with its walls and stuff. And so when it comes to Zechariah, you see Zechariah is visited by an angel that says, build a wall, and another angel that says, no, don't build the walls. Fire from God will be the walls. And so with this Abraham here, you have two powers. You have the two powers in Exodus, the ones that's talking and the one that's doing the avenging. And then you have these two powers in Abraham, one time to sacrifice a son, another time to stop. So these powers are working together and contradicting each other at the same time. And so here's Ruddy Esau, the hated one. This is a story of Judah, because his mother was hated. Leah was hated. And so David said, they hated me without a cause. And Jesus quotes this in John chapter 15. He said, so it says in your law, they hated me without a cause. So that's what Malachi's trying to say, is that Judah was just hated. And that's why it's in such a lowly position. But this lowly position, as Jesus said, salvation comes from the Jews, is the salvation. Because for the meek shall inherit the earth. But this isn't what the people are doing. You see, when it comes to the people, it says here in John chapter 8, it says, woman, where are those accusers? Where are those accusers? Jesus says here, he says, you judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. That's John chapter 8, verse 15. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. Just a few verses earlier, he said, woman, where are your accusers? Your accusers. So that's what Lamech's 77 slaps are accusations that if somebody slapped him or killed him, he'd have 77 revenge killings to undergo. So therefore, nobody mess with him. And that's how people were using the law, is to accuse people at the gate. And that's so that they could do them injustice. When you do it by the gate, you can administer justice quickly with the fewest people noticing. If you did it in the center of the city, you have to drag them out, the guilty party, and while they're screaming, I didn't do it, and then take them out of the gate. But, at the gate, it's just like, all right, you pretty much, this is your last chance. We pretty much decide your fate. You better get on your knees and admit you're a witch, and then maybe we'll give you a chance. So So this is Isaac's promise to Jacob. Behold, the fat places of the earth shall be their dwelling. This is the Esau. And do the heaven from above, and by thy sword they shall live, and thou shalt serve thy brother. And when it shall come to pass, when thou shalt break loose, that thou shalt shake his yoke off thy neck. This is the story of the southern kingdom. Because yes, it's true that Esau did shake the bondage off the neck of Esau did shake the bondage off the neck of Judah, in Second Kings, that John Hyrcanus put them under the same. Herod was the king of the Jews. Matter of fact, when zeal got to its highest point after the Sicarii, Jerusalem was completely controlled by Idumeans. Those were the zealots. So the Jewish Roman war wasn't even against the old guard. It was against those that were ruling it at that time, who had taken over. And these were the Idumeans, who were the Judeans. And they weren't even the Herodians. They were another Judean tribe, or clan, that is. And so Jacob's anger, it says here in Genesis 30, verse 2, Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel because she wanted children. So now her womb's getting unclosed or something, and then she'll break forth. And so this child is the one that Jacob favored, Joseph. So all the drama that went down with Joseph is because his brothers were jealous of him. This is Ephraim. This is Shiloh. This is where the first temple was. This is where the first king was. It's not too far from Jerusalem. It's in both, like in the borders of Benjamin, and Ephraim being like this northern part and Judah being the southern part. But Joshua is about the original Canaanite Israelite story, but Judges is a Judahite story. So this is about how the Israelites were serving other gods, and they were married with the Canaanites, and they had Canaanites living with them. So therefore, the ones that are favored, the second born, it's not even fair, right? I thought the whole time that because they were trying to tell you that the second born is favored, that's how God wanted it. That's how it has to be. But a lot of times, that's how the mothers wanted it, or how people. So we got to understand if they're right or not. What if they're not right? Right? What if the Bible's not even saying they're right? What if the Judahite source is saying, well, these other people, they were worshiping false gods, and they got chosen even though they were second. So me being first, I have the birthright. And Jacob stole it. So they're even claiming to be Esau. They're saying, well, our mother was hated, right? And only because the father favored you is why you got the birthright. But really, this is why you were kicked out. This is why Cain is Israel. That the Deuteronomist, the second law, is greater. So this is why Malachi is mentioning Horeb, because Horeb is where the second law came. And that's why in Judges and stuff, it's like God came out of Edom, right? And okay, so it says here, 32. So if Jesus is Shem and Abraham's given all these gifts to Shem, then Shem is greater than Abraham. Well, here in Genesis 31, it's got Jacob giving all these presents to Esau. He's given Esau gifts. And he says here, it says here in Genesis 31:19, then thou shalt say, they are the servant Jacob's. It is the presence to the Lord, and to my Lord, even unto Esau. So Esau is his Lord. So when it says that the older shall serve the younger, this is in the Messianic age. This is what is the culmination of the age. This is what will happen someday. Jacob will serve Esau. I mean, Esau will serve Jacob. But it hasn't started now, because here he is saying, that you're my Lord, and give him all these gifts. And then in this is when he wrestled with the Lord. Then when he finally meets him, they're all bowing down. But even though he was greatly wronged, Esau's showing mercy and love and forgiveness and grace. These are godly characteristics. So, in my opinion, he's still Jacob's God. And he's got these high places, Seir, but that's not where he resides always. I mean, he's out on the lamb looking for lambs, and he's like eating lambs and drinking water and things like that. He's not just stuck. Like, Jerusalem's a unique place because there are a couple water streams that go near it, and then some Canaanites dug a tunnel that, they dug a low spot, and there's where the pool of Siloam is. So even though Jerusalem sits at a high point, it still has some low points near enough to it that they can make a tunnel and a pool. So, now they won't let their daughter marry anybody. But yeah, I mean, these are really interesting. Like, one of these names of his daughters is Oholibamah, the sons of Oholibamah, the daughter of Anav. These are and then you have the chief of the Kenaz. Remember, we're talking about Caleb, the chief of Korah, Wow, right? And these are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son, Reuel. That's like the Midianites. So Oholibamah, that reminds me of Ezekiel. So we'll go to there. And but before we go there, I want to hit a few more places. I want to point out that Exodus is not Deuteronomy or Numbers. Like, a lot of what they're allowed to eat quail here. It's all about the box and the robes and the Ten Commandments and the law. And I mean, yeah, there is a story of the rock. He hits the rock, which is Jesus Christ, and the water. But this might have been added by the Deuteronomist, so yeah, there was an early Canaanite source called Israel. The early Canaanites, the ones were related to the Hyksos. And yeah, they might have driven some people out, but these people that drove out were basically them. And this has to do with the spread of the Acadians and the Hittites and the Amorites and different things like that. And yeah, they might have spoken a language more similar to Egyptian back then, but that might have had more to do with pragmatics. And I think that's really what Genesis 10 is all about. And so when it comes to Exodus, that's what it's really about. Like, a lot of the stories we know of the desert are really from Numbers and Deuteronomy, especially Numbers for the stories and Deuteronomy for law. And so it's really interesting to try to imagine if Deuteronomy and Exodus are from a later source, which I really feel strongly, I'm not the only one. And same with Judges and Joshua, most of Leviticus and most of Genesis earlier being the Canaanite Israelite source. Then that's the Elohist source, which was very similar to the Ugaritic and different, Tyre and Zidon. So that's why, you know, Tyre and Zidon are held up to such a lens of scrutiny by the Judaic source, the one that wants to claim that Hiram Abiff helped Solomon build his temple. So if it's all about who's paying tribute to whom, is how they viewed it, who's superior. And if that's the case, then isn't Hezekiah paying tribute to the Neo-Assyrian king? And I think he is, clearly. And where is it going to go? To Ezekiel. I don't think I'm going to have enough time to get into John 8, so let me hit a few things in John 8. What else I got to hit? So, the original Israelite source is getting replaced by the firstborn because of a contrite heart. It's, like, I didn't go down to Egypt, as it says here in John chapter 8. It says, you are slaves to sins. What did it say? Anyways, it says, most assuredly, this is John chapter 8, verse 34. Most assuredly, I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. A slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. And so these people that lived out in the wilderness were considered to be ascetics. And there was a lot of anger of Israel towards these Judean desert dwellers, the Idumeans. And there was jealousy coming from the other side towards the Israelites having their own place. And so this is what the stories in Judges and stuff serve to do, is to show how the Israelites were abusing their privileges, and the poor Judahites, who are really the Idumeans, are dispossessed, and so when the prophets are talking about Edom as a wasteland, this isn't meaning future, definitely. It's meaning past. Absolutely. It's meaning, and this is also their salvation. Because as Nicodemus asked Jesus, how can one be born again? Well, that's through the baptism, and the baptism represents death. And so when Jesus sets up his kingdom, it's with the martyrs. And so here, I want to show you that this is true, that Idumea was ruling, and this is through their destruction and servitude to Israel. And then the day would come where they would no longer envy them. And this is when they were strong again. And this is when they shook it off. And this is when Israel was destroyed. And this is when Judah became power. But this is so. But they're saying, as I'll show you in Zechariah, that Judah is going to get, like that they're going to be. It's going to be over and over that they're going to meet a similar fate to Israel had, because that's what they chose as how they defeated Israel, by being better than the Gentiles, by being those better than their predecessors, the ones they consider to be foreigners. because they said they're cake not half turned, a cake half turned. So if they believed that these Israelites, were fake, and when they took the temple, when Judas Maccabeus destroyed the Samaritan temple and all his descendants destroyed the Samaritan temples, that they believed that was their comeuppance, that they had been serving the Israelites for the whole first temple. Now the second temple is going to be a new song unto the Lord after captivity, as it says in the Psalms, Psalm 96 and 98, whatever it was, that the Psalm of David after captivity is a new song. So the second law is this story. So that's where I'd probably differentiate what I think from what the Bible Project thinks, is because they got it confused that Judah and Israelite are the same people, that they're aptly named. But I'm here to say that they're not. That although Israel had the law first and had the kingdom first, they weren't the firstborn. And so the story of the taking of the firstborn and giving to the second, how that is true for the Judahites, this isn't what the prophecies are all telling us. The prophecies are telling us, and I'm talking about a few prophecies. I'm talking about the last of the prophets. I'm talking about just Malachi, just the end of Isaiah, and stuff like that. That it's talking about that Judah is too going to, even though they got their firstborn status back, that because of their focus on the law, because that's what that asceticism is. That's what the Dead Sea Scrolls are showing us. That's what these people like John the Baptist were doing. They were saying that not all Israel is Israel, that those who, live by the law and remember it and do all that, those are who the Israel are. So even though you have the inheritance because you're Levites, you're the priesthood, you're the original, well, here's the Nazarite exception. And we got this way in and we got it cut off. And so now the firstborn has rightly reclaimed his destiny, his birthright. And this is the grace and goodness that Esau can show the nations by being a light to them, showing them the way to salvation. And I'm going to have to continue this. I want to show you something in Hosea, but I better not use the JPS to do it because I'll get lost. All right, I'm out.